speaker, I want to know a little bit about them, what qualifies them to be addressing a group like this. And so I always tell people, entrepreneur, a really recovering CPA, CFO, started my career. I always say I served my time at this firm you may have heard of called Deloitte & Touche, and now is now just Deloitte with a green dot. And then left there, was corporate controller, eventually CFO of about a $350 million food service distributor up in the Carolinas. All the gray hair I have came from that job because I learned how to manage a cash flow that was very, very tight in a very capital intensive business. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but I always say cash is king, and learning how to manage that's really important. But really after about 2 years there, I really wanted to get out of what I call the accounting finance box, get into running a business and building a business. And so that opportunity led my family and I back to the Atlanta area, where I took over running the day-to-day of, at the time I walked in the door, it was a 30-year-old print and promotional distributorship. Okay, so anything you would put a logo on, so whether it's that shirt that you're wearing, corporate apparel programs, business cards, any kind of printed, anybody remember those 3-part, multi-part forms that used to run through the dot matrix printers? Mm-hmm. So the founder of that business started it in '85 as a forms distributor, okay, and grew it, pretty significantly. Was really more of what I would call a lifestyle business. For the first 30 years, had about 9-10 employees, one single office there in Atlanta, doing about $3 million. Could never really break through that ceiling. And pretty much overnight, as he would tell the story, the company more than doubled because, as he would say, God literally dropped an acquisition in his lap. From a financial perspective, I've never seen a deal that sweet, but it really, again, doubled the business. So he went from one office, about 10 employees, to 3+ offices, 40+ people spread across 7 states. Wow. So he is what we would call a visionary entrepreneur. So he's kind of looking around thinking, oh my gosh, I don't really like managing people. How am I going to manage all these people around the country? And so that's really where I came in. He hired me to come in, help him run the business, kind of digest this acquisition. And what I found was the company was really kind of, not in a crisis mode, but really in this mode of trying to figure out who they were, because they were a 30-year-old business, but in a declining industry. The forms business, if you can imagine, has kind of been going down as everybody goes to electronic type processes and things. And so we really needed to figure out, how are we going to continue to grow and really bring this new business into the fold, but also continue to grow outside of the print world. And so about 3 months into me starting working there, he was sitting in a similar meeting in his business owner forum group, hearing about EOS for the very first time. He brought it back to me, gave me this traction book, and said, hey, I think we should look into this thing called EOS. I said, what's that? I'd never heard of it. And so we brought this guy back in, kind of gave us the overview, and we really felt like it was a gift from above, perfect timing for us. And so we began on this EOS journey using this system I'm going to share with you today. And what it did, it allowed us to get absolute clarity on, as John mentioned earlier, the vision of the business. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Giving clarity to every single employee, what they were accountable for, what they needed to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to help us achieve that vision. And it really just gave us a blueprint or a roadmap on how to do that. Okay, brought the structure and organization that we needed to propel us towards those big goals that we set. Now, over the first 3 years of that journey, we had grown our revenues 50%, so we had more than doubled the business again from a revenue perspective. We had grown our operating profit 200%. So I always say, you don't have to be an accountant or a finance person to know when your profit goes up, cash flow goes up, and the valuation of your company goes up. Long story short, about the end of the 3rd year, I was so impacted personally by the results that we were getting. I said, his name was Gary. Gary, I love what we're doing here, but I really want to go help other business owners do this. I love helping take something and making it bigger, better. It's helping achieve those goals. And so he said, that's awesome. I bless you in that. But by the way, I've been out of the day-to-day for 18 months, is what he told me. And he had completely kind of moved into what we call the owner's box. And he said, I'm 62 years old. I don't want to come back in and take over the business, so will you stay on long enough to help me sell it? And I agreed to do that. Right about the end of the 4th year is when we sold the company, the 4th year of me being there and using this system. And based on the multiple that he got paid, the increase from year 1 to year 4 was about 44%, which I can't give the exact amount, but it's a 7-figure increase. So it was a great return for him and the investors. And I learned this system by actually living it, okay? And now, for the last 2 years, I've been teaching it and coaching it. So I've got over 6 years of kind of living in this. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm going to share some of what we went through as we progress in our time together today. So real quick, I want to give you just a high-level overview of EOS. It was started by this guy named Gino Wickman. This book came out, it's called Traction, about 18, 19 years ago. I've got one copy that I am not taking back to Atlanta, so the first person to raise their hand if you want it. I don't know who I saw first.
It was
all right. But so Gino started the business about 20 years ago, and really what he did, and you're going to hear a lot of these concepts, you're going to say, wait, I've heard that before. In my opinion, what Gino did was he took the best of all these business concepts and leaders, Michael Gerber, Patrick Lencioni, Jim Collins, and he packaged it in a system. Okay. Over the last 18 years, myself, we're now up to about 350, we call ourselves implementers around the world, have conducted over 55,000 full-day sessions with the management teams of over 8,000 companies. So the last thing I'm going to tell you, everything I'm going to share with you today has been perfected, it's tried, it's true. I always say it's loaded for maximum impact. There's no theory, it's just simple, practical tools. All right. So I just want to keep it simple today. And by doing that, I first want to give you a quick handout, give you something to write on. You can take some notes, so if you'll pass those around, should have enough copies for everybody. So each of you are a business owner or leader in your organization, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit. All of this really applies to any type of organization. I really believe that as a business owner and leader, your primary responsibility is to answer what I call the 3 questions. Okay? And that's on the front of this page, so you can write these down if you want to. The first question is you need to get clarity and answer for yourself and everybody else on your team. What are you building? Okay, so yesterday it was kind of interesting for me because we met in a general contractor's office. So I use a lot of building analogies, and we actually, Robert, I think you said you're an architect?
Yes.
Okay. So, Robert, would you or a client, would anyone ever consider building a house or a building without having someone like you develop the plans and the drawings of what it's going to look like when it's done? Don't you kind of need that to construct something?
Sure.
So you know what you're doing?
Right.
Right? And so I always ask business owners, why would we not think that same way when it comes to probably one of our most valuable financial assets, which is our business? Most companies I work with, the owners, a lot of them are family businesses, and honestly, most of their net worth is tied up in their business. And so they're waiting for the day they can sell it and cash out, and that's going to help pay for their retirement. Right? So we got to know, what are we building? Number 2, how are you going to build it? So first we got to define what we're going to build, then we got to define how we're going to do it. And then the third one, which is really important, is who does what? So I would go out on a limb and guess that most of you that have organizations or companies, I know there's always some exceptions, but no great business can be built by a single person. You need a team of people to help you, right? Unless you're just the mad scientist that does everything and never has to sleep, okay? So what I want to share with you today is what we call an operating system that helps you absolutely answer these 3 questions, okay? All right, now everything that we do in EOS revolves around what we call the EOS model, all right? That's the wheel-looking thing. I've heard it called a lot of things. It's on the bottom of that page. So I'm going to do a very quick flyover of these, what we call 6 key components, okay? There's a lot of detail here. I don't have time to go into each one, so I've picked just a few that I'm going to go into some detail, give you some tools today. But just know this is a whole system. There's a lot more to it. Yes, sir?
Does EOS stand for something?
It does.
Okay, I don't know what it is.
But I bet you'll
This
find
is
out.
this is part of my problem because I just assume everybody knows. So great question. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I think it's in the.
It's on the hand.
Is it on the little book?
okay.
It's in that,
But
yeah.
it's in little print.
Yeah, it's very tiny print. I do that as a test to kind of see who knows what that is. Okay, so it's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it was built for entrepreneurs, right? This, while there's great principles in this, it's not built for Coca-Cola and MetLife, right? This is built for those companies. We say, 10 to 250 employees, 2 to 50 million. Although I've got one client that's they did about $1.2 million last year, wealth management firm, and my largest client is a oil type business. Sounds similar to yours. They're about 100 million. In revenue, 150 employees, so kind of spans the gap there. So the 6 key components. So number 1 is vision, okay? Now this is really where we help you clarify those first 2 questions. What are we trying to build, and how are we going to build it, all right? Anybody ever heard the proverb, and forgive me, I don't know the name, where there is no vision,
People perish.
Oh,
the
Hosea
people
5:6.
perish. I'm sorry?
Hosea 5:6. My people perish from a lack of knowledge. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah,
Or the
Probably.
or vision.
There's
Yeah.
two.
The one I remember, I thought it was in Proverbs,
It is
where there
Proverbs.
is no vision, the people perish, right? And so
That's good.
we got to give absolute clarity to ourselves and everybody else on what we're building, where we're going, okay? So I'm gonna deep dive into this here in just a second. Now the second one is people. We already heard that is where a lot of our frustrations lie, is with people. So I would say they don't follow through, they don't do what we need them to do, they show up late, we can't find good people, we can't keep good people, right? I hear that every industry I work with, it really comes down to finding and retaining top talent, okay? My answer to that is create an environment where people want to be and you'll keep them, right? But that's harder to do than it sounds, okay? And so today I'm going to share with you a couple of tools to help you clearly and objectively define, well, what does it mean to have great people for your unique company? Right? Because you cannot achieve a great vision without great people. Now, number 3 is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's called the data component. And data for us is not just looking at what most business owners look at on a monthly basis, which is the P&L, the income statement, the balance sheet, how much cash is in the bank. Right? What we teach is you really need to be looking at a handful of numbers every single week that drive the results, not just tell what the results are. Okay, so the example I give is if you're just looking at weekly sales, okay, that is the equivalent of driving your car just looking in the rearview mirror. Okay, because it's something that already happened. You're looking backwards. You can't really control sales from last week. Right? So what we do is we got to figure out what are the activities that we got to do every single week. Sales, marketing, operations, safety, cash flow. What are the things somebody has to do every week to drive the results that you want? All right? And so what we do in this system is just figure out what are those, and we keep it simple, 5 to 15. Right? We don't want 50-page dashboard or KPIs. Okay? So we just want to make sure we have a pulse on the business and are looking at what drives the business from a numbers perspective. Okay? Now the fourth key component is the issues component. Anybody have issues in their business? Right? I always say we all have issues. Personal issues, professional issues. Every company has issues, and many businesses are dealing with the same issues month in, month out, quarter in, quarter out. They're beating their head against the wall. Why are we still dealing with this? Right? And so I'm going to share with you today the way that we really help teams get what we call a strong issue-solving muscle, right? Building a muscle to help you really you and your team solve those issues. Now, the 5th key component is the process component. This is the bane of most small businesses. There's what I call a lack of written or documented processes. There's a lot of tribal knowledge, okay? How many of you have long-term employees, like more than 5 years, okay? Anybody have like 1 or 2 people, they can do every job, or they do their job really well, they know it in and out, but they maybe are the only one that knows it? I've had that in prior companies, right? And so what we teach is you got to figure out what are those core processes and then get them documented, all right? Now, before you start getting worried about, oh my gosh, we're going to get into documentation, we teach a very entrepreneurial approach, so it's a high-level documentation. It's really more on the major steps, right? So I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you feel like you have pretty good written or documented processes, how you do what you do? Those of you that are in a franchise, you probably at least have a franchise manual or something that tells you how to do things. Now, whether it's right or not, or works for you or not, right, that might be a different story. But we got to figure out what are those processes and get them documented. That allows you to be consistent. Okay. Last but not least is the traction component. Now, traction, when you hear traction, just think execution. Traction is all about execution. Most business owners' dreams or vision for their business goes unrealized because of weakness in the traction component. They just can't bring that vision down to the ground and execute on it. One of the quotes from Gino Wickman, our founder, says that vision without traction is just hallucination, right? And so I always say, most of us have an amazing vision and plan for our company, but it's many times trapped up here, all right? So again, what we're doing in the EOS model is we're working to strengthen these 6 key areas. Now there's a delay between my computer and the wireless projector, so that's why I keep pushing and then it jumps ahead. So basically the journey that we work on with our clients, and if you read the book, it's the same journey, is we want to get you to at least 80% strong, okay? Most companies start this journey at about 20% strong in those 6 key areas. Now if anybody's interested, there's a link I can send you. You can email me, all my information is on the back of the page there. There's a 20-question questionnaire that will actually spit out and give you your ranking for your business based on how you answer those questions for each of those components. Okay, so if that's something you're interested in, shoot me an email. I'm happy to share that with you. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to drill down, give you some practical tools. Okay, we want to keep it simple, but hopefully give you some good takeaways. All right, so the first question I mentioned is you got to decide, what are you building? Okay, what are we trying to build? So this is where, specific to your organization, what are you trying to build? Do you want to be a $50 million business? Do you want to be a $25 million HVAC company? Or do you just want to be a $10 million HVAC company? Right? Do you want to be, on multiple AMCOs, or, be the top? Sounds like you're already in the top 20, right? Do you want to be number 1? Right? Are you okay with being where you are? Right? And so we just got to get clarity. Here's how EOS goes about giving you clarity on that. We call it answering the 8 questions. Okay? So those 8 questions, I'm going to share a tool with you. The first tool I want to give you, you can take one and just pass these around, is something that we call the Vision Traction Organizer. Now, the Vision Traction Organizer, you'll hear me say the VTO, okay? And very simply, what we do through this process is figure out what are the answers to these 8 questions. That's what gives you clarity on what you're building. All right, so I'm going to kind of pass over these real quick, paint a little bit of a picture for you. So we start with core values. So each of the 8 questions really are the 8 sections there in blue. So let's start with core values. I'm curious, anybody have written or stated core values in their business? A couple of people? Okay. So for those of you that have core values, are you using those core values to hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize your employees? So for the most part, great. So I'm going to show you our tool on what we recommend doing that to try to make that very objective. So one of my favorite quotes around values is Roy Disney, right, Walt Disney's brother. And he said, when you know what your values are, it's easy to make decisions. I kind of substitute or add in the word, it's not hard to make people decisions when you know what your values are. Okay, so I'm going to share a tool with you here in a minute on practically how do you know that they fit your culture? How do you know they share your values? Okay. Now, core focus is our term. Some of you have heard mission statement, vision statement. Anybody have a written mission or vision statement? Anybody want to share what theirs is? Do you remember it? Dean? Tom?
Transformation Jacksonville is to facilitate a unifying movement that demonstrates God's love for the city. Vision is
Yep.
the whole church taking the whole gospel to the whole city.
Awesome. Yeah, and so hopefully that drives everything you're doing, right? That's why you're doing what you're doing. And so our core focus is really a two-sided coin, is what I call it. It's why do you exist? That's really that heart level. That's the soul of your organization. And then what do you do better than anybody else, right? What is your superior skill as an organization, okay?